goodness gracious.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
You look gorgeous.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Thank you.
You're awesome. Um, I'm gonna be a giant nerd if you don't mind. Um, Anytime I see your name attached to anything, I will watch it. It'll be like you could be doing a commercial for like Long John Silver's and I would be there. It's just I was a huge catastrophe fan. I was just
Oh,
so absolutely in love with that. I'm so glad that you and Rob are both nominated this year.
I
I think,
know. It's so lovely, isn't
yeah,
it?
it's
Amazing.
like a little catastrophe reunion for me.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I hope so. Sometimes you go there and it's really hard to, find anyone, but I have to find them.
yeah. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to me. Congratulations on the nomination. Your
Yeah.
nomination was my favorite thing that morning. So, if you can't tell already, it's just going to be 15 minutes of me being like,
Do you know what? It's 5 o'clock here in London. It's perfect. Perfect
good.
time. I've been slaving over a hot laptop, and it's nice to know that someone somewhere is going to watch it, whether it's all about Long John Silver's or not.
Yeah.
Actually, don't know what that is. Is it like a restaurant?
I'm actually really embarrassed that I said that. It's like a fast foody, seafoody. There's
Okay.
a lot of tacky like ships with nets on the wall. Very pirate themed, very stupidly ugly, grossly American thing. American, I think. Yeah. Um. So I love the show so much. I thought something that I got I wouldn't say defensive about it, but people were so obsessed with the first season. And I remember I had seen like some screeners for season two, and people were like, "Oh my god, what are they gonna do with season two?" And I got I remember saying to one person, "It's like, well, if you murder someone, you don't just go like dancing in the meadow afterwards. Like there is an aftermath. We have to talk about the aftermath." Um, and so I guess I wanted to know kind of what excited you about season two and all of its like beautiful messiness.
Um, I think it was that really. I think once I decided I was going to do it,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I honed in on the most was, how on earth do they go back to normal? Because, the whole thing, even with the first season, even though it was kind of crazy in its premise, it was always like the thing I think that people liked and what grounded the whole thing was just that they were normal women,
Mm-hmm.
doing this very not normal thing. So, with that sort of premise, and especially with regards to Grace being such a good person and having killed the father of her child, like how do you get on, and how does it impact, you know, how does it impact on your psyche, and how can you, what's your next relationship, and
Mm-hmm.
how can you, in that sort of vulnerability and heightened state, how do you protect yourself, and how do you make sure, that your family are able to protect you when you're so used to guarding a secret. So all of that I just found really like really drew me to wanting to get back in there again. But then there was also, you know, working with those girls again, and getting to, like, trying again to sort of balance the thing of, okay, we're dealing with a subject that's really kind of, well, not kind of, very serious, and at times really brutal, and but balancing it with this sometimes ridiculous caper, because I don't think
Mm-hmm.
the second season would have been the same if we weren't taking Fiona Shaw out to sea, and kind of doing that sort of the action sort of side of it.
Yeah.
Um, it's that blend of the thriller and the drama and the comedy, and then I guess its very own, the thing that it owns that's kind of specific to Bad Sisters.
Yeah.
because I figured people would want to see the same thing, but also want it to be very different, because no one, I don't, do you know what I mean? It
Yeah,
had to do something different.
it sort of feels like there are so many scenes where it's the four remaining sisters where the kind of tension between everybody and the sort of like heightened freaked outedness of what's unfolding, it literally feels like a bomb has gone off,
Yeah,
like right outside the house or even in the room, depending on who comes
yeah,
in, who comes out. And I think as a viewer, that's really exciting. And sort of the mixture of the comedy and the really sad things. I rewatched just the other day the funeral scene, and when the pastor is speaking, and I can't remember who says it. I think it's BB's wife, where she says, "Oh, he had a stroke last year," and then Sam Green starts laughing, and you have this line where you're like, "Well, that's just great. That's great," and then the sort of real emotion just like a split second later hits, and it crumbles to the sadness of everything. So that's something that I at least respond to. This sort of like
yeah.
happy,
Yeah, it
sad,
has to
yeah,
be able to do that. It needs to be very, flexible. And the actors as well need to be so nimble, because
mm-hmm.
they're going from, like you're saying, something really sort of kind of stupid. And if I'm honest, sort of, um, like kind of cheap laughs occasionally,
Yeah,
like, but, I feel that most people will have experienced grief, and most people will have experienced that insane um, sort of tight wire that you walk between just being on the floor and being delirious with laughter, because how else, your emotions are so all over the place that, I mean, I just, that's what I found, and that's how I kind of thought, well, we can make a series that's about so many things, but a lot of it is about grief,
yeah,
and we can also continue to do that tone where, it's also about sisters arguing about, you borrowed my shoes again. Like,
yeah,
you have to be able to tap into that. And because yeah, I do genuinely feel that a lot of what people loved about it was that relationship,
yeah,
the sisters, just being sisters.
yeah. The I don't know. There's something how I really personally respond to things that feel like grief and laughter live so close to one end, like they do. Like
Yeah.
it's such an honest, true thing. And I hate when people talk about like the binaries of comedy and drama. I just want to take them, but like it's not just Bad Sisters, but another show, any show where they're like, is it a comedy or is it a drama?
I
I kind of want to like take them by the
know.
face and just shove them.
I
It's like shut up,
know.
shut up. Um,
I totally
yeah,
agree. It's a tricky thing, isn't it? Because there is so much crossover now. And
yeah,
like half hour oftentimes isn't necessarily funny,
yeah,
and an hour long can do so much more than just be dramatic.
yeah.
It's I don't know. I think you just have to tell a story the way it needs to be told, right? And
Hmm.
sometimes you need levity, and I mean, I personally prefer some levity in my drama, because that to me is just like what life is like.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know.
I
It's
need I need to
it's
laugh at
personal
least a
thing.
little bit. Like if it's just like a dirge, that's not what life is. So
No.
yeah. Um, I kind of want to ask about Eva's loneliness. When I was going back through and watching a lot of stuff, I think there's a scene that you have with uh, Ian where you say, "I feel very lonely." Um, and I don't know. There's a lot of like Eva does a lot of I don't say self reflection, but I mean she talks in episode 5 where she's like, "I'm old, I'm grieving, I'm happy, I'm happiest on my own." Um, And I think something that I love about your performance and what the writing really does in season 2 is really shows a new shade of her vulnerability, and this
Yeah.
sort of how season one, maybe how people look to her as a, a guiding light, like that's sort of really crumbling, and I feel like we see it a lot on your face. And I guess I wanted to know, like, what it was kind of like to really embrace that loneliness this season.
Well, um, it was gosh, you know what? It was kind of hard actually, just for a load of reasons, personal and otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
but we had to get her to a place where she was so vulnerable that you don't question that she enters into this, relationship with Ian, because it's like you said, we spent the first season really building her as this sort of really strong, like matriarch and patriarch of the family, and everything went through her, and everyone relies on her, and she's not found a traditional, relationship, but she's dealing with it, and she's holding
Mm-hmm.
this deep secret and managing to like keep it all together whilst holding that. And so when we join in season two, all of this, we had to do this with all of the sisters, which was have um the actions and the story in season one impact on who they are now 2 years later.
Yeah.
And for Eva, it's kind of like I felt she'd sort of made peace with where she's at. She's going to stop drinking. She's going to look after herself. She's going to, kind of embrace what it is to be at this point in her life, and embrace being alone. But then in losing Grace, all of that kind of goes, and everything, she's not coping, and she's having to deal with her niece who's hateful towards her. She's having to deal with her own grief, and she's having to um um deal with the grief of her whole family, and it all sort of builds, and it's like she's not allowed kind of show those sides, and that's why we felt we had to give her this kind of extra sort of confidant, this sort of menopause type trainer who she gets to just be a little bit kind of real and vulnerable with. And but anyway, it was all sort of building towards those moments where he can see the point where he can just get in there,
Yeah.
that point when she is at her most vulnerable. And um yeah, I found it hard, but I kind of knew I was going to find it hard. I
Mm-hmm.
just it was more important to me to really bring the audience along, and not for them to go, hang on, this isn't the character. Do you know what it's like when you have a series that you love and your characters are doing something out of character, and you're like, hang on, I invested all this in
Yeah.
her. You told me she was this way. That's so it was like it was a real sort of transition, and sort of really hoping that it was an honest and sort of truthful way of showing her the damage, and how
Yeah.
she sort of deals with it all.
After I had seen it, revisiting it after I'd seen it the first time, and then, when you have a sort of duplicitous, treacherous character, Ian slash Cormac, to sort of like even see how he physically kind of invades Eva's space in like a way that telegraphs to her, like, oh, I'm comforting her.
Yes.
Um, it's really there's a lot of really beautiful moments where that happens, and it's like the way that he poses questions, like when he texts her and is like, is it okay for me to tell you that I'm thinking about you? So I feel like it's a very understandable, very relatable kind of thing. Her world has been rocked by the loss of her sister, and I didn't even notice the first time. I'm glad I noticed it a lot. Sort of speaking of that loneliness, where I was just like, there's a lot more moments where we get to see you kind of alone in the house by yourself.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of like we can see out the windows, we can see the sea, we know how big
Yeah.
that house is. So I really felt that, and I completely understand how maybe she would get to that point. The I will say when Eva and Ian actually do end up getting together, the way I was screaming at my television, I was like, "What are you doing? Stop
Which
it!"
point though? Do you mean
Mm-hmm.
when he kisses her at the end of
I think it's
episode 5?
5 or 6. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like in the back of my mind, I was like, I knew it was coming, but it was sort of like
Yeah.
it's kind of weird when you're watching characters and you're like, why aren't you listening to me?
I
um,
wanted people to be shouting at her though. I really did. I wanted them to sort of be shouting at her, but then I sort of hoped that there might be a moment in 6 where they're like, would this be so bad? Like, what,
mm-hmm.
he's her co-parent essentially, at that point, and she is so lonely and he's lonely and they can comfort each other. I mean, I've, had it happen to me in grief, not exactly like that, but you're so emotionally sort of ripped open and
Yeah,
and porous and it can happen. But I also knew that she had to, without feeling like she was sort of sneaking around the place, really keep it to herself, because her sisters, and particularly BB, would rip her a new one, if
mm-hmm.
they thought that. But at a certain point I kind of felt like maybe there'll be a point where we actually get an audience kind of rooting for something that they really feel that they shouldn't be but can't help,
Yeah,
because there's this poor woman hiding behind the door of a toilet, like, racked with grief, but also someone sort of being there for her for the first time in, like, a very long time. And
yeah.
maybe they'll cut her some slack, and then to pull the rug after that would feel um satisfying, and like, I fucking knew it kind of moment.
It's sort of like we're standing in like we're on a. I feel like this season we're on like a hallway runner, and someone just keeps yanking and like we
Yeah,
should get off the carpet, but we're not going to. I felt the
yeah,
same way like when I think it's episode 5 at the very end when the thing on the boat swings down and
yeah.
smacks Fiona Shaw in the face. Like, I screamed watching a screener at 1 o'clock in the morning. My husband's right over there. I probably woke him up um, when that happened. So yeah, there's a lot of emotional turmoil as an audience member that I feel
So
that I went through.
glad. I'm
Yeah,
so glad to hear it.
yeah.
You just, it's you know it's like that thing of like, you make a show 3 times. I can't remember what the saying is, when you're writing it, and then when it's being filmed, when you're performing it, and then again in the edit.
Mm,
And especially with a show like this, where it is so, there's big swings, like, literally. And
mm-hmm,
how it appears on the page, and then how it comes across in the filming of it, and then eventually when you're kind of showing it to people at that sort of edit stage, it's so different, and you get so many opportunities to sort of tweak and adjust along the way, and then really you just like pray that people get it, or just
mm-hmm,
dig it. um
yeah.
but yeah, I loved that. I mean, the boat stuff to me is some of my favorite scenes. I mean, I'm not in them, but I just love them.
There's a part that I didn't notice the first time when it's like a wide shot of the whole boat and Fiona Shaw is throwing the ashes. It's the way she does it like this, and it like blows in their faces,
And they're like,
and they're just like, "What the fuck?" And they're I was cackling watching that yesterday. It was just the gesture. It was really
I know.
I love it.
She's so funny. She's
Yeah.
so
I have to say the introduction of her and Una, I love that we meet them in the first episode.
Yeah.
And I distinctly remember having moments watching this season for the first time where I was saying, I was like, get away from these sisters. Like, get away. Like, it's interesting for both characters. Like, obviously, the wagon. You're just like, go away. Like you're causing so many problems. And then Una is, you know, a young, ambitious young woman who's trying to do the right thing in the eyes of the law. And it was, I sort of felt weird that I was like, go get away from these girls. Just go
No,
away.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
funny, right? It's funny who you root for, and also
And it changes. Yeah.
the journey that you end up taking with those characters, how they both, you know, you are exactly that, just a bit like fuck off. But then you end up, you know, they become the heroes, really, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in their own way. And certainly that's like, it's such a pleasure to do that to a character, you know, to see
Yeah.
them go on this journey. And, you know, Una being such a good person, but sometimes good people are so, you know, annoying, you know, and Angelica being such a, you know, on the surface kind of baddie, but then realizing, you know, she just wants to be loved. Like,
Mm-hmm.
really, you know, she's someone who thought she found a kindred spirit in Grace, and it's just, you know, got ripped away from her, and bad choice after bad choice, but just desperate, you
Yeah.
know, to be loved.
Yeah. I kept thinking about how her grief over Grace um is sort of like living parallel to the grief that the sisters are going through. Obviously they're
Yeah.
very different, but it's also just like she's also in a lot of pain, and she
Oh, yeah.
found someone who she clearly loved and is missing.
Yeah.
So going back and rewatching the scenes where everybody's so combative against her, I don't know, it broke my heart a little bit because it's,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
We used to
um
talk about it a lot. We used to sit around with Fiona Shaw, and she would, you know, I mean, this is like before we started filming, and that idea of just being, you know, not an entirely different generation, but different enough for, you know, your choices and sort of what was on offer to you as a woman, you know, was so different. Like she's looking at these Garveys and going, how do they have that freedom? You know, how can they
mhm,
carry themselves in that way? And why is their lens so different?
yeah,
And and also, I mean, I don't know if it's you know, I don't know the difference between Northern Ireland and the and the Republic as well is so different, you know, a much more sort of conservative background. And we spent so long talking about those things, but mostly she would just talk about how much she loved the Garvey sisters,
yeah,
how much she wanted an in there, but was
yeah,
just going about it in the wrong way all the
yeah.
time.
Okay. um I just have one silly, stupid question before I let you go. I just will say
Oh,
that I told Derba Walsh this when I talked to her, that I just feel like these characters are so alive, and I feel like they're living somewhere in Ireland. They feel very. I think I think about them a lot. It's I don't know. But I wanted to know if you have a go-to karaoke song that you may or may not like to sing on your birthday, because I love episode 5, the togetherness that we see, that beautiful togetherness in episode 1 at like the races. um I don't know why I felt compelled to ask you that, but here we are.
well, I mean, if I'm honest, it's usually either a Sinead O'Connor or the Cranberries, but I'm
Cranberries,
really,
hell
really
yeah.
not averse to you know, a duet because I think it's always you feel safer. So I, you know, Islands in the Stream, Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers, that
Oh yeah.
I've given that a go, you
Yeah.
know.
Okay.
Very bad harmonies, you know, but
That's what karaoke is all about, bad harmony. I love that. um Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for letting me gush at you so embarrassingly so.
oh no, not at all.
Yeah,
Thank you. It was a
just
pleasure.
love the show. Big fan, so thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate
All right,
it.
bye.
Nice to meet you. Bye.
You too.